People who cut off their families, what finally made you walk away for good? I was 26 when I realized my mother had been stealing my identity since I was 14. It started with a phone call from a collection agency about a credit card I'd never opened. Then came the threatening letters. 6 accounts, $43,000 in debt, all in my name. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just stared at me across our kitchen table, the same table where she'd taught me to write my name in kindergarten. I needed it for us, she said, lighting a cigarette even though she knew I had asthma. For this house, for your college. You think all that was free? I'd worked 2 jobs through college thinking my scholarships weren't enough. Meanwhile, she'd been vacationing in Cancun on credit cards with my name. That night, I pulled my complete credit report. The devastation was worse than I imagined. My credit score was 417. There were 3 payday loans, a repossessed car, and a foreclosed vacation property in Florida I'd never heard of. Each item had my forged signature, a signature I'd watched her practice on napkins for years, thinking it was just her obsessive perfectionism. What hurt most wasn't the debt. It was finding evidence of the double life she'd built with my identity. Designer clothes, jewelry store accounts, a membership to a country club where she'd told them I was her successful entrepreneur daughter who's always traveling. My entire adult struggle had funded her fantasy life. I gathered everything and drove to the police station. The officer looked bored as I laid out my documents. Family fraud is complicated, he said. Most victims don't follow through with prosecution. I'm not most victims. 3 days later, I sat across from a detective. To file charges, I'd need to formally declare I was not a willing participant. My mother would face felony charges. Prison time was likely. Are you sure you want to do this? The detective asked. Once we start, there's no turning back. I thought about my childhood. Mom was a single parent who worked night shifts. She'd leave me dinners with little notes, study hard, and reach for the stars. I'd believed we were a team, struggling together. As I hesitated, my phone buzzed with a text from her. I've always sacrificed everything for you. If you do this, you're dead to me. I stared at those words for a long time. My entire life, I'd been taught that family loyalty came before everything. Before truth, before self-respect, before justice. I looked up at the detective and slid my phone across the desk so he could see her message. That, I said, pointing to the text, is why I'm sure. The arrest happened on a Tuesday. I wasn't there, but neighbors called to tell me. They described her screaming my name as they put her in the cruiser, yelling that I was the ungrateful one, that I'd betrayed her after all she'd done. My father, who'd left when I was 3, called that night. You don't turn on family, he said, no matter what. Where were you when she was destroying my life? I asked. The line went dead. My aunt showed up at my apartment, banging on the door until neighbors threatened to call security. She has cancer, she shouted through the door. Did you know that? She needed that money for treatments. I didn't respond. Later, I called her doctor. There was no cancer, never had been. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for Thursday. As I walked into the courthouse, my phone flooded with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years, cousins calling me heartless, uncles questioning what kind of person prosecutes their own mother. My grandmother, who I'd thought was dead, left a voicemail saying I'd never been worthy of the family name. I sat alone on a wooden bench, waiting to be called in to testify. That's when I spotted him across the hall. My older brother Michael, who disappeared 10 years ago after a massive fight with Mom. He looked different, healthier, steadier. He sat down beside me without a word. How did you know? I asked. I've been monitoring public records with your name, he said quietly. I've been waiting for this day for years. I turned to face him, confusion washing over me. What do you mean? He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a document. A credit card application from 12 years ago, with my name. Only I would have been 14 then. You weren't the first, he said. And if you don't finish this, you won't be the last. Before I could respond, the bailiff called my name. As I stood to enter the courtroom, Michael grabbed my wrist. There's something else you need to know, he whispered. Something much worse than credit fraud. In the courtroom, Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were puffy, her hair uncombed. When she saw me, she mouthed the words, I love you. Throughout my testimony, I avoided looking at her. I focused on the documents, the detective's questions, the facts. Not the woman who'd read me bedtime stories, not the woman who'd taught me to ride a bike, just the criminal who'd stolen my identity. The judge scheduled a formal trial for the following month and set bail. As they led Mom away, she didn't look at me. Outside, Michael was waiting. We walked to a nearby coffee shop without speaking. For 10 years, I'd believed he'd abandoned us. Mom had told me he was on drugs, that he'd stolen from her, that he'd threatened her. Looking at him now, clear-eyed in a crisp button-down shirt, a wedding ring on his finger, it was hard to reconcile that image. I'm sorry I didn't look for you, I said, breaking the silence. He shook his head. She convinced you I was the villain, just like she convinced me you were complicit in what she was doing to me. The server brought our coffees. Michael didn't touch his. When I was 17, he began, I found out she'd taken out student loans, credit cards, even a second mortgage on the house, all in my name. When I confronted her, she convinced Dad I was lying, that I'd done it myself. He beat me so badly I ended up in the hospital. I tried to remember that time. I'd been 9. Mom had told me Michael was in a car accident. After I turned 18, I tried to file charges. Nobody believed me. She was a respected teacher, a single mom working hard for her kids. I was just a troubled teenager. He pulled out his wallet and removed what looked like a business card. He slid it across the table. This detective helped me back then. He couldn't make the charges stick, but he believed me. He's the one who told me to watch your credit reports when you got older, warned me that she'd likely do the same to you. I stared at the card. Detective James Morales, the same detective I'd spoken to 3 days ago. He recognized your last name, Michael continued, called me immediately. Is this the worst thing you were talking about? I asked. That she did this to you first? Michael looked down at his untouched coffee. No, he said quietly. It's about Lily. My heart stopped. What about Lily? Lily was our younger sister. She died when I was 7. A car accident. At least that's what Mom had always told us. Michael would have been 15 then. There was no accident, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been building a case for years. Detective Morales has been helping me. He pulled a folder from his messenger bag. Inside were dozens of documents. Insurance policies, medical records, police reports. Mom took out 5 life insurance policies on Lily in the 6 months before her death, he said, pointing to the documents. All paying triple for accidental death. Combined payout was over $2 million. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers. This can't be real. The night Lily died, I heard her crying. Mom had given her something to help her sleep. When I checked on her, she was barely breathing. I called 911, but Mom had already called them, reporting a car accident at a location 20 minutes away. By the time they figured out the real emergency was at our house, it was too late. I remembered that night in fragments. Mom waking me up, telling me we had to go to the hospital, the confused police officers, the doctor's bewildered expression, Mom's theatrical collapse in the hospital hall. How do you know all this? The paramedic who responded suspected something wasn't right. The timeline didn't make sense. There was no evidence of a car accident. But Mom's brother was chief of police then. The investigation was shut down. The paramedic kept notes, though. He gave them to me years later. I felt sick. Why are you telling me this now? Michael met my eyes for the first time. Because last week, Mom took out a life insurance policy on you. $2 million, triple payout for accidental death. The coffee shop seemed to spin around me. I gripped the edge of the table. That's why I've been monitoring your records, he continued. I was afraid something like this would happen after you confronted her about the identity theft. When Detective Morales told me you were pressing charges, she was planning to kill me, I whispered. Michael nodded. We think so. But now she's in custody. You're safe. I laughed bitterly. Safe? My own mother was planning to murder me for insurance money. He reached across the table and gripped my hand. His touch was unfamiliar. A stranger's touch, really, after so many years. We can stop her, he said. For good this time. The trial was scheduled for April, but in March, Mom's lawyer approached with a plea deal. She'd serve 7 years for the identity theft if I'd agree to drop further investigation. Detective Morales advised against it. We're close to building a case for your sister's death, he said. If you accept this deal, that investigation ends. I spent a week agonizing over the decision. Taking the deal meant Mom would be punished, but not for her worst crime. Rejecting it meant gambling on successfully proving a 12-year-old murder, with the risk she might get away with everything. In the end, I chose to fight. The district attorney added charges of insurance fraud when we presented evidence of the policies taken out in my name. Mom's lawyer demanded a psychological evaluation, claiming she suffered from Munchausen by proxy. The trial was delayed. During that time, Michael introduced me to his family, his wife Sarah, and their 4-year-old daughter, Emma. They lived 3 hours away in a small coastal town. He was an accountant. Sarah taught elementary school. Their house was filled with sunlight and children's artwork. You can stay with us as long as you need, Sarah offered. We have a guest room. I'd been living in a constant state of fear in my apartment. Every unexpected noise made me jump. I accepted their offer and took a leave of absence from my job. Living with Michael's family was like stepping into an alternate universe, one where parents spoke kindly to their children, where disagreements didn't end in silent treatment, where love didn't come with conditions. I watched how Michael kneeled to eye level when speaking to Emma, how he never raised his voice, how he apologized when he made mistakes. Did you learn this from books? I asked him one night after Emma was asleep. He smiled sadly. I learned what not to do from our parents. The rest is just trying to do the opposite. In May, Detective Morales called with news. They'd located the paramedic who'd responded the night of Lily's death. He was willing to testify. They'd also found Lily's original toxicology report, which showed a lethal dose of sleeping medication. The report had been buried, replaced with a falsified version showing only minor traces consistent with the car accident story. The district attorney added first-degree murder charges. When the news broke, the family members who'd been harassing me suddenly went silent. No more angry voicemails, no more accusations, just a deafening quiet, except for my father. He showed up at Michael's house unannounced, pounding on the door at midnight. "You need to stop this witch hunt," he slurred, clearly drunk. "Your mother is not a murderer." Michael stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. "Did you know, Dad? About Lily?" Our father's face contorted. "Your sister was sick. She was always sick. Your mother did everything for her." "That's not what I asked," Michael said calmly. "Did you know she killed her?" Dad lunged forward, but Michael was ready. He caught his arm and twisted it behind his back, pushing him against the wall of the porch. "You come near my family again, and I'll have you arrested," Michael said. "We're not scared kids anymore." After Dad left, Michael sat heavily on the couch. "Do you think he knew?" I asked. "I think he suspected," Michael replied, "but he didn't want to know for sure." The trial began in September. I testified for 3 days, describing the pattern of identity theft, the insurance policies, the inconsistencies in Lily's death. Michael testified about what he'd witnessed the night Lily died. The paramedic, now a physician, testified about arriving at our house to find a child in respiratory distress, and a mother who seemed more concerned with maintaining her story about a car accident than saving her daughter. Mom didn't take the stand. Her lawyer presented her as a mentally ill woman suffering from a disorder that made her harm her children for attention. They brought in experts who testified about Munchausen by proxy, painting her as sick rather than evil. The jury deliberated for 6 days. On the 7th day, they returned with a verdict, guilty on all charges: identity theft, fraud, and the murder of Lily Evans. As the judge read the sentence, life without possibility of parole, Mom finally looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only cold fury at being caught. Outside the courthouse, reporters shoved microphones in my face, asking how it felt to put my own mother behind bars. I had no words. Michael guided me through the crowd to his car. That night, while everyone else slept, I sat on the porch of Michael's house, looking at the stars. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling a weight on my chest. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? This is a collect call from Mountain View Correctional Facility. Will you accept charges?" I should have hung up. Instead, I said yes. "Why?" Mom's voice was hollow. "After everything I did for you, the familiar manipulation, the guilt, the implied sacrifice. Once, it would have worked. What did you do for me exactly?" I asked. "Besides steal my identity and plan to kill me?" Silence then. "I gave you life, and you tried to take it away. That's not love, Mom. That's ownership. You'll never escape me," she said, her voice changing, hardening. "You're just like me, more than you know." I thought about Michael inside, sleeping next to his wife, about their daughter, safe in her bed, loved unconditionally, about the life I might still build, free from my mother's poison. "No," I said. "I'm nothing like you, and I never will be." I hung up and blocked the number. The next morning, I applied for a job at a design firm in Michaelstown. I found a small apartment 10 minutes from their house. I started therapy. I learned to sleep without checking the locks 3 times. On the anniversary of Lily's death, Michael and I visited her grave for the first time in years. We brought flowers and cleaned away the weeds. We told her we were sorry. We told her the truth had finally come out. As we walked back to the car, Michael stopped. "Do you ever wonder about the years we lost? What our lives would have been like if we'd known the truth sooner?" I thought about it. I try not to. We can't get those years back. He nodded. But we got each other back. That's something. It was more than something. It was everything. 6 months later, I met someone. David, an architect with kind eyes who asked permission before holding my hand for the first time. On our 3rd date, he asked about my family. "It's complicated," I said. "I've cut ties with my parents." I waited for the judgment, the uncomfortable questions. Instead, he nodded. "Sometimes that's the healthiest choice," he said. "Family should earn their place in your life, just like anyone else." I nearly cried in the middle of the restaurant. Last week, a letter came from Mom's prison. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope. For a moment, I considered opening it. Old habits die hard. The need for approval, the hope that maybe, finally, she'd changed. Instead, I lit the fireplace in my new house. David sat beside me as I tossed the unopened letter into the flames. "You okay?" he asked. I watched the paper curl and blacken, taking her words with it. "I'm free," I said, and for the first time in my life it was true.